The Jazz Spotlight, episode number 3. Hey, what's up everyone? This is Yanni Lunga from thejazzspotlight.com. I'm super excited about today's guest. She's a great artist and she's also a festival organizer. What about that? It's with pleasure that I pass the word to Amy Bormet from LA. Hey, what's up, Amy?
What's going on?
Thank you for being on the show. How are things in LA today?
It's sunny, like every single day is sunny, and it's beautiful outside, so
Life
it's
is
great.
good.
It's a great day. Yeah, I'm glad we could work it out with the time change.
Okay, let's start immediately because we have so much on our plate, so much to talk about. So tell us, Amy, what are you up to these days?
Well, right now I'm working on writing a lot of music in Los Angeles. I have a project going on that's it's a song cycle of Gwendolyn Brooks poems, and Gwendolyn Brooks was the first Black poet who won the Pulitzer Prize in 1950, and a great poet, and I've always been a huge fan of hers. So I started writing a song cycle about her for a singer friend of mine, Maggie Haspatcher, who is a singer and a bass player. So I just finished that, and that'll be premiered in July. And it's a series of art songs. And then also I'm working on a project of my own with a quintet, and it's a whole bunch of new music that's sort of based around the idea of a robot falling apart. So that'll be, hopefully I can get that put together during the summer, but I just finished the music for that, and I've kind of redone a lot of it in the last 6 months and been reworking it. So just a lot of things.
Now I'm really curious. You have to go more into detail about the robot falling apart kind of thing.
Sure. Well, I don't want to ruin the plot for you before you get to hear it. But it's basically about a robot and sort of going through her life and how she starts to go insane, basically, and fall apart. And basically how our society treats things that have gotten old and things that have fallen apart, and technology that is, all the things that we're throwing in dumps and getting rid of all of the old technology, and how that would feel if that was actually, personified in a robot. So that's the basic idea. And so there's 10 songs, and there's a couple of instrumentals on the end, and then I have some songs in the middle about that the robot sings. So I sing and play piano, and then there's guitar and saxophone and bass and drums.
All right. So it's going to be for July, you said.
I'm hoping July. So I'm working on trying to find a space for it now.
That's really interesting. So tell us, Amy, how did you become a musician?
Well, when I was a kid, my mother always played the piano. We had a piano in our house, and my brother started taking lessons, and I got really, I wanted to be competitive with siblings. So I started taking his books and reading his books. And then eventually my mother put me in lessons too. So I started playing the piano, and I played the clarinet, and I was singing, and pretty much anything I could find to make noise on, I made noise on it, and sort of grew up that way. And there was always a lot of singing going on in my family, and we always liked to, singing Christmas time, and everybody was gathering around the piano and all that kind of good stuff. So I sort of learned a love for music that way, and then started getting into jazz when I moved to DC, and I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts. Mm-hmm. And there's this wonderful man named Davey Yarborough who still teaches there. And he is just incredible and such a huge force on the DC jazz community. Almost everyone I know has studied with him and spent time with him. And so I went to, every morning I would go to school early, and he would show me how to play different things, and how to play beautiful chords, and how to comp behind myself while I was singing, and different repertoire and all that stuff. So that was a huge influence in my life, and really helped get me into music school studying at University of Michigan with Jerry Allen, and then eventually I got a graduate degree at Howard University. So, and the whole time I was in DC was playing at clubs, and it's such a great city and a great place to really play jazz music. So that's how I got into jazz.
And talking about influences, is there an artist in particular that you think it has been the kind of your biggest influence?
Wow, my biggest influence. That's so much pressure. I think it would definitely be, in terms of a person who's been my biggest influence, I would say Dr. Billy Taylor is someone I've really admired. And, I got a chance to work with him quite a bit at the Kennedy Center, and really have admired everything, in his whole career. He was performing, but also advocating for jazz. And, he started the Jazzmobile. He was doing all the jazz shows on NPR and CBS, and, has really, he'd really done a lot for jazz and also for women in jazz. He started the Women in Jazz Festival at the Kennedy Center, and just has been a huge inspiration and such a wonderful person that I had in my life. So,
and you mentioned the festival, so I think it's the best moment now to start to talk about it. How did you come up with the idea? Like, what was there something inside of you, or what pushed you to get started?
Well, it was definitely inspired by Dr. Billy Taylor and what he did at the Kennedy Center. I actually, to step back for a minute, I did a residency program called Betty Carter Jazz Ahead at the Kennedy Center, which, every year they bring in 25 or so international young musicians, and you get to stay at the Kennedy Center and work with all these wonderful musicians that are there. And when I was there, Dr. Billy Taylor was the head of the jazz programming, and getting a chance to talk with him, he told me all about, starting the Mary Lou Williams Festival, and how he used to study with Mary Lou Williams, and what a wonderful woman and pianist and everything, and how he always felt that, women in jazz were never appreciated as much as they should have been. And so then right after I did that and met with him, I then had a couple of months later had the experience of performing at the Mary Lou Williams Jazz Festival at the Kennedy Center, which is, attracts international women to come and perform there, female jazz musicians. And I said, well, this is really great. But when I was backstage, I was seeing all these women there who were from DC. And I said, well, there's plenty of women in DC who are not being featured, who are not being highlighted at the DC Jazz Festival, or, the East Coast Jazz Festival, or any of these other festivals. And I feel like we could all come together and really make a statement and create a lot of energy and positivity behind, female jazz musicians. So that was sort of the inception of that. And then of course Billy Taylor passed at the end of 2010, and I started my festival. I started working on it January of 2011. So definitely having an idea of how I wanted to make an impact on the jazz scene, and how I wanted people to think about DC, and I wanted them to think there's some great female jazz musicians. Not only are there great jazz musicians in DC, but the female jazz musicians can really, really swing, really hold their own. And so that's kind of how it started.
All right. And my next question to you would be, did you start to talk immediately about your idea with the other female musicians, or is something that you kind of first work on it by yourself, brainstormed, kind of closed in the room kind of thing?
I cloistered myself. Well, the first thing I did was I wanted to make sure I had a space, because it's so important. The jazz scene, I think in everywhere, but the jazz scene in DC is especially difficult to find enough performance spaces where you can go and showcase your music, where people aren't, concerned about what the music is going to be, or what, where people will let you sort of do whatever you need to do. So I found a space. I was lucky enough to work with Kelly at Twins Jazz, which is on U Street. U Street's a very historic street in DC for jazz music, and was Black Broadway and, a ton of huge theaters on U Street. So I started working with Twins Jazz Club, which is a very small, tiny, tiny space on U Street. And Kelly said, who was the owner, said to me, well, you can do whatever you want. And so I booked these four consecutive Wednesdays there at Twins. And so then I immediately knew, I had so many people that I wanted to put on the festival, and it was like too many people almost. So I had to really, be aware of who would work well with other people, and what, who I could pair with other people. And that, so that first year I put together, every show had one vocalist and one instrumentalist, female instrumentalist, female vocalist. And then they would get together and plan out, how to work on each other's sets. So it was really a way of collaborating and creating a space and for different types of musicians to get together. And there's often a big divide in the jazz community between singers and instrumentalists. So I wanted to bring that together because I thought it would really attract two different audiences and get a lot of people interested. So that was the beginning of my plans. And then, of course, I found people who I know and I love and I've played with before, because I knew they would be, 100% committed to helping me promote the festival, and they would be excited about what was happening. So
that's very nice. But now I have a bit of a tough question for you. What has been the most frustrating thing about coming up with the idea and establishing the Washington Women in Jazz Festival?
I think, it's frustrating, obviously, trying to find enough money to do all of the things I want to do. So I have tons and tons of ideas, and, I need to find, every year I'm looking for different places to support the festival and different people to support the festival. So it's been difficult because I have a tendency to just say yes to everything and to want to do all of these things. And especially now that I have relocated to Los Angeles, but I'm still running the festival in DC. It makes it even more difficult to try to find and secure the funding that I need to make the festival better and better each year. But this year I did have a big help in that because I ran a fundraiser online through the Fractured Atlas, which is a nonprofit arts organization. So I ran a big fundraiser through there and actually had a lot of funding come in to support my big gala concert, which was with Allison Miller, a wonderful drummer who's originally from DC, and Mary Halverson, also who's incredible guitarist and has really been getting a lot of press and attention and is wonderful. So I fundraised all this money so that we could have that show and make that show work. So it's, that's been frustrating, but it's also makes me realize how important it is to cultivate relationships with people who are interested in helping me promote the festival. So.
Mm-hmm. And how is the life of the festival during the year? You have the festival this year, it was from March 15th to 22nd. And how do you keep up the festival after that? How do you come up with ideas for the next year's edition? How do you find new fundings, maybe new venues, new performers? How do you do all these things?
Well, a lot of it is very organic because hopefully the venues that we work at really, really like working with the festival. And we've managed to sell out mostly every show in the history of the festival. So, people like it when there's people, and I try my best to get a lot of promotion for the festival. So they like that too. So that, every year I try to keep the venues that I've had before and the relationships that I've had before, but obviously sometimes that doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. So I am constantly on the lookout for new places too. So, I don't really know how that all works. It just kind of does. And word gets out that I'm looking for spaces and people come to me with ideas. That's, as the festival has gotten bigger, people have come to me and said, well, wouldn't it be cool to do this. So actually, I went to Sweden. I went to Gothenburg in November to speak at a conference on women's equality in music.
Wow.
And and it was great. So I got this invitation to go to Gothenburg and meet with all these wonderful people at Kultur i Vasten, which is a great cultural organization. And so now I've set up this exchange with Sweden. So we're going to be doing a concert next year at the festival at the Swedish Embassy. And we're bringing Swedish female jazz musicians. And it will be, a celebration of International Women's Day with jazz. So we're going to have Swedish jazz musicians and DC female jazz musicians, and we're all going to play together. So, things just happen and people get excited about the festival and they see things differently than I do. So I try to take other people's input and make it work while obviously keeping all the things that I like and constantly being on the lookout for new people to bring into the fold.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of comments or critiques that you've heard from people, which one has maybe hurt you the most, if we can say so?
Well, I get frustrated when people ask me, why do you still need a women in jazz festival? Why are you doing this? And they don't see it as something that's valid. So that's frustrating to me. But it really, I haven't had that much of that kind of comment, and it's so quick. I can so quickly respond by saying, the number of women who are on major jazz festivals is so low. It's often not even one major headliner is, a female instrumentalist. Maybe they'll have one female singer on the whole headline. And, now the last couple of years, they've had a lot of really good male singers, Gregory Porter, who's a great singer. I keep joking that Gregory Porter is going to take away all of the female jazz musicians on the jazz festival because they get Gregory Porter and then they don't have their one token female singer. So it's kind of rough. And if anyone doesn't see that, I am kind of shocked because it's very, very obvious when you look over the materials. Or maybe they'll have one concert with one Terry Lynn Carrington or something. So. It's never, the percentages aren't really there in terms of how many female jazz musicians there are in the country and, how much work they've been doing. They just, women don't get the kind of press in the jazz community that they deserve. I know I've been frustrated with Melissa Aldana, who she won the Thelonious Monk competition for saxophone and was the first female instrumentalist to ever win the Monk competition. And there was a little bit of press about it, but nowhere near the amounts of press that have come from the Monk competition in the previous years. And and I don't see her appearing at very many festivals, and I don't see her with the kind of press behind her that the last few winners of the Monk competition have gotten in the jazz community. So it's frustrating to me that they wouldn't seize the moment with this and say this is the time that we're going to create space for everyone to have a more equal scene in the jazz community.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the press. In terms of promotion for the festival, how has it been, your experience with the press as founder of the Washington Women in Jazz Festival?
Once I get through to people, it works really well. I've been really lucky because while the festival has been growing, there's also been another organization called Capital Bop, which is a jazz online jazz calendar and critique of the DC jazz scene. And they put out every week, all of the DC jazz events and do a lot of analysis of the DC scene and have a lot of great people there that I've, basically had a media sponsorship from them because every year they've really put out a lot of information and they've helped me. This year, the big gala concert I had, they it was at their venue, at their space. And so I've gotten a lot of help from Capital Bop, and they are attracting a younger scene and also really keeping track of what's going on in DC. So it's been invaluable to me. And also the radio station, WPFW, which is the jazz radio station in DC. This year it was hilarious because I feel like I kind of lived there. I went back and and like I said, it was snowing the week of the festival. So I went back and forth in the snow. I didn't rent a car until the festival, was underway. And so I didn't have a car, and I was taking the the bus to the radio station almost every day in the snow. And I was like, I should just stay here. Can I just sleep here, guys? They were very supportive, and I was, interviewed by several different DJs and news people at the radio station. And I think that really, really helped this year. So it's been good. And, in terms of physical press, we had a write-up in the Washingtonian magazine, which is more of a DC culture magazine. And we also were in the Washington City paper. So, we've managed to get our thing together. I had two wonderful interns working for me this year from Howard University, which is my alma mater, and they were just incredible at getting the information out and really helping me while I was in Los Angeles, trying to get on the ground attention for the festival. So it worked out pretty well.
How do you promote the festival during the year and during the festival days?
Well, we have our, of course, you already are very aware of our Twitter page and our Facebook page, our website, all that good stuff. So if people Google it, they can find us quickly, which I think is important. I also have an email newsletter that I try to keep updated so that people can keep track of what's going on with women in jazz in DC and broader than that during the year. And a lot of the women that we featured have put out new CDs, and there's always a ton of information to share with people. So I just try to keep the content updated every month or so during the year. And then once the festival is gearing up again, January, February, it turns into a maelstrom of photos and press clippings and whatever I can find to put up on the internet to make people pay attention.
Mm-hmm. And now you've told us about the festival perspective, so the organizational part of it. And if you were to give advice to all the young women of jazz out there that they would like to perform to a festival like Washington Women in Jazz Festival, what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, well, I can only speak for myself. I don't know about other festival promoters and other people like that, but the way that I bring in new people to the festival is through the jam sessions at the festival, which are open to the public. And so we have, this year I think we had 3 jam sessions, but they're all, wide open, and I advertise them, and then people come down and they get a chance to play with the band, and to meet other jazz musicians. It's not just women that come to the jam sessions. It's everybody in the DC scene comes down, wants to play. And it's a very welcoming and loving space for all sorts of people to come out and play the music. So that's one way of getting involved with the festival, is to actually literally go to the festival and learn what it's about, and really get an understanding of, who's in charge and who's making who's making the decisions, the artistic decisions, but also being aware if you are a good fit for the festival. I've had a lot of people apply for the festival who I don't think are, even the same genre of what, the type of music that I'm trying to present. So I don't really have any smooth jazz. I don't have any R&B. I don't do a lot of that on my festival, but I have people sending me stuff all the time, just blank form letters, and it just doesn't work. So you have to be really very vigilant and do your homework before you contact somebody. And the best way to contact somebody is face to face. And I've learned that by trying to deal with venues and deal with making contracts and meeting artists. The best way to deal with people is face to face. And the jazz scene is very old school. So going down to the club and seeing a show at the club that you want to play at, and then talking to the owner afterwards, or even better, if you know somebody who's playing there, go see them, support them, and then say, hey, could you introduce me to whoever does the booking? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a great advice, actually, to first to do your homework, because I think it's important what you said, that you have to be
on the same page with the festival. So I think it's a very good advice that you gave. And also, like you said, jazz is still pretty much old school. So it's important to really be on site, talk with people face to face, and and see how it works, how it feels. Because maybe from the outside you have an opinion about a place, the atmosphere, and what's not. And then once you spend an evening there, maybe there is something that, just says that, yeah, it's a great place to spend an evening too, but maybe I wouldn't perform here for some reason.
Yeah, maybe this doesn't work for me. So, it's a two-sided relationship. And I feel like respecting the person that you're trying to approach is so important. And that's something I've really learned from, not only the venues, but also trying to get the press, like we were talking about earlier. Instead of just sending out press releases to everyone willy-nilly and just saying, here's my show, and not putting their name and not contacting them. It's just lazy. And I think that people need to, if they really want to get good press coverage, which people ask me all the time, how did you get press coverage for this? I reach out to individuals, and I engage in a dialogue with them. And you can go on Twitter and find so many jazz journalists and so many people who want to cover your event, but they don't even know about it. So you have to go and read what they're writing about and comment on what they're writing about and really create a dialogue with people. And that's what's going to get you, into the scene. It's more than just making one gig or making one press release or one, show in the paper.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
It's about being a part of the scene. So that's what I encourage.
And in terms of, like, now we've talked about being old school, going and talking face to face to kind of do your homework and see what kind of genre are presented to a festival or to a venue. But what about the online side of it? What advice would you have for the young artists that are out there about websites, social media? First of all, how do you promote yourself as an artist? And second, what advice would you give to musicians out there in terms of promotion online?
Sure. Well, for me, I spend a lot of time trying to get my act together. So it's about figuring out what's the most important thing to promote, and I see a lot of jazz musicians that are promoting, their restaurant gigs that they have, promoting that on Facebook. And, is that the most important thing for you to put up every week, that you have the same restaurant gig where people know they can come and see you there? But is that what you're trying to promote? Really getting a focus on what your goal is in your promotion is so important. And having one show a month or having one show every 6 months, but you got to keep that focus on the goal of getting people to come out to your show and to be interested in you, and to be interested in your music.
And how do you do that?
That's the magic question. For me personally, when I put out my CD a few years ago, I just started doing the same kinds of things that I was saying before, is talking to people face to face and, getting person by person, one at a time, attempting to acquire a fan but you can't be mad when people don't have any interest in your music. A lot of people don't even listen to music. So I don't know what's wrong with those people, but you can't be mad when they don't have an interest in your music, and you just kind of keep moving through the list and trying to find, people who are interested in seeing you perform live. And I would much rather have a small group of really devoted fans than have a bunch of people, on Facebook and on Twitter and that aren't really devoted to me as an artist, aren't really interested in what I'm putting out with the festival, aren't really, it's not about numbers. It's about quality, the quality of the audience, the quality of the people, who you can count on to come to every show that you tell them about. So that's the goal. And also being really maximizing every public performance that you have, and keeping an email list and offering promotions on your email list and discounts to people who are in your network, taking advice from other corporations that you see what they've been doing and kind of steal their ideas, so here's my promotion that's only sent out to my email newsletter, and it's $5 off the show tonight. And so you can do whatever you want because there's nobody telling you what to do, which is liberating, but also very frightening, I think, for a lot of musicians. And it takes a lot of time. It's like a whole nother job. It's not just showing up and looking good and sounding great. It's also, being able to cultivate that audience.
I actually really like what you say about the cultivating, kind of, like creating a sort of community more than just, followers. And like you said, I also think that it's better to have less people, but who are really, devoted to you, like you said, than just having hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of people who are just, just a number and not people. Because I think that's the key. And also when you mentioned about the newsletter, I think it's really important whether you are a musician, a festival, a website, a newspaper, to create value for people, be it a discount of a show, giving fresh updates of free online resources like I do on the Jazz Spotlight, that kind of stuff. I think that's where you can really cultivate someone and maybe even make him or her appreciate you also for that side. So not only you are a great performer, musician, singer, but also in terms of the way you communicate, the way you interact with people, that makes you even kind of better.
Definitely. Well, and I think that way when I'm putting together shows, I like to have shows that really bring the community together and have a space for people to interact more than just listen to the concert. I want people to talk to each other, not just about the music, about everything. I want people to interact and have a really good time, because when I go to a show, a lot of times I love to see the music and I go to listen to the music. But if I wanted to listen to music, I would just stay home and put on some Coltrane. And so, when I go out, I'm seeking people and interaction and some life. And so that's what I try to do when, whether it's my personal events or the festival concerts and events. And I try to make them very interactive and really warm and make sure that all of the people that I have performing at the festival are very, interactive with the audience and very open to talking to people and getting to know people. And I think that everyone I've had, especially this year, was very obvious that people were just constantly talking about the festival and making it really into a social activity, which is, I think, the only way to make the music survive.
That's very true. So from what you say, it really sounds that you're really active. You go to concerts, you really interact with other musicians, with fans. I have to ask you, who is the last performer that you have seen live that has really impressed you?
Not on my festival.
Could be on your festival, could be at another venue.
Yeah, well, let's not do the festival because there's so many great performers. I don't want anyone to get jealous and then they'll call me and say, "Why didn't you say me?" Because everyone was, Brandy Younger, the harpist, was incredible to see somebody play the harp like that, and just amazing. But I have to say, the last person I saw who really made an impact on me was not just, because of her band, because of everything, the songs, the presentation, that feeling that I crave of community and interaction was Carmen Lundy, who's a great singer and teacher and songwriter, and she lives out here in LA, but she travels everywhere, and she has this monstrous band that I just adore, which now includes Patrice Rushen, who is a wonderful pianist and teaches at University of Southern California out here. But, is basically a female Quincy Jones with piano chops. Like, she's got everything. She does production work, and she writes symphonies, and she writes pop music, and she's, so seeing the two of them, and Carmen Lundy's whole band here in LA was such a great night and such a great show. And you could tell that Carmen personally knew more than half of the people in the audience. Like, and it wasn't because they were like in her family. It was because they had been her fans and following her. And she's so developed as a performer, and she has all of this emotive acting ability. It was really stunning. So, and she's going to be in LA. She's playing again, I think this week, like Thursday night, or Wednesday or Thursday night in back at the Blue Whale in Los Angeles. So I'm definitely going down to that. And she's making another album with this band, and she's somebody that I am totally in love with. I think she's an incredible performer and promoter and everything.
So Carmen Lundy is definitely a name you would recommend to people looking for some new music.
Some new music, yeah. And she writes amazing songs. So, it's not the same old jazz standards that you know and love. It's brand new music, but it's definitely in the jazz tradition, and incredible band.
All right, Amy. Thank you very much. To wrap up this episode of the Jazz Spotlight podcast, I would like to ask you a couple of more questions about what you've told us. So actually more than questions, are to give out a couple more advice. So the first of would be for all those people out there who are planning to, just get with it and just start with a festival. What would you say to those people?
I would say start small and promote yourself. Give yourself a lot of hype. When I started, I only had 4 concerts, and then we ended up with 5. But so I only had those concerts, and I only had 2 different venues. But I decided I was going to call it a jazz festival instead of a concert series, or instead of I don't know what else you could call it. But I decided this is, damn it, this is going to be a jazz festival, and I want this to have some space to grow. So start small and, just start right away. Don't be afraid.
And for artists out there, singers, saxophone players, trumpeters, female artists, what advice would you give them?
I would say, more than anything, don't be intimidated, by the jazz scene and by the overwhelming maleness that often appears to be on the jazz scene, because there are a lot of women out there who are making jazz music, whether you can find them or not. They exist. So just go out, be in the scene, and you'll become more aware that if your music is good, you're going to get somewhere. So that's what I would say to that.
Okay. So you told us about your plans for July, if everything works out. What are your plans for the summer other than that? Do you have anything coming up?
I'm just working away. I'm hopefully going to make a record with that robot music that I was telling you about. And once I get that solidified, we can go into the studio. That's the nice thing about LA, is there's a lot of cheap studios out here. So I'm hoping to get that done over the summer, and then have it to promote, and I'll probably put it out early next year. So that's my biggest plan for the summer. And also, like I said, this commissioned work I've done for voice and bass will be premiered on July the 18th. And I'm blanking on the venue right now, but it's here in Los Angeles. So if anyone's in LA on July the 18th, they can come hear my new music. And yeah, those are my biggest plans. I'll probably be doing a lot of teaching. I think I'm going to be back in DC for a few weeks. I'm also doing a Midwest tour with my husband, who's a guitarist. We're going to go do, I think, four dates in the Midwest, Indiana and Chicago at the end of August. So that's our scheme.
Sounds really interesting, really busy, but I'm sure you love what you do, and I'm sure that everything is gonna go just perfect, and you're gonna have a great time in New York, DC, Midwest. And when can people find you online? What's the best way to reach you online?
I'm on Facebook and Twitter and all of that stuff. It's all listed on my website, which is amykbormet.com, and it has all my contact information there. So if anybody wants to find me, you can find me through any channel, and I will be available. And yeah.
We will also include the links in the show note that we will have along with the podcast. And what about the festival? What is the best way to learn more about the Washington Women in Jazz Festival?
Well, it's the same thing. We have all the social media platforms, and all of them are routed to our website, which is WashingtonWomenInJazz.com.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
And we
also have email lists and things like that, so you can keep track of what's going on.
That's great. That's great. And you can also check out the article we featured on the Jazz Spotlight. So if you just go to thejazzspotlight.com/Washington Women Jazz all together, we featured an article on the last edition of the Washington Women in Jazz, so you have your plate full with all kind of information. So this was Amy Bormet. Amy, thank you so much for being on the show. You've been fantastic.
Thank you for having me. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support and finding out about the festival. And you and I are the success of jazz on Twitter.
I wouldn't call, at least on my end, a success, yes, but I'm happy that you appreciate what you do and what we have done, and I wish you all the best for the festival, for your career, and for your life as well.
Well, thank you so much, and right back at you.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, so that was Amy Bormet. I hope you enjoyed her story and the story of the festival that she launched, the Washington Women in Jazz Festival. Now, I would like to ask you a question. If you are a festival director, I would like to ask you this. How do you get artists for your festival? Leave your comments at thejazzspotlight.com/episode 3. If you are a musician, I would like to ask you this. How do you promote yourself? And how do you find festivals and venues to perform at? I'm Yanni Lunga. Thank you for listening and thank you very much for your support. Take care.